Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this channel. Today is 21st of November. Now it's 11 in the morning, Moscow time, 11 a.m. And as always, I have prepared quite a number of news on some major developments, and hopefully, you will find this update informative and useful. And in that case, please don't forget to click that like button and leave some commentary. This might help to deal with the freaking algorithm. So maybe video will reach wider audience. And so yes, that's been said. Let's go through some news now. And first reporter is about visit of Russian president on headquarters of the West Group of Forces. RIA Novosti is reporting, and many other media outlets about it, basically. And during a meeting of Russian president with the commanders of Russian armed forces, including head of General Staff Gerasimov, he was briefed that Russian militaries liberated Kupyansk, established full control over the Kupyansk city, which is, of course, a major development on the line of contact right now. And in addition to that, we have this reporter that I see on RT that, according to TASS news agency, Ukraine lost about 3,000 troops and about 900 pieces of different military equipment while attempting to break out of Kupyansk in past few weeks. So tremendous losses on part of Kyiv regime, of course, there. And also, in addition to that, TASS news agency is reporting that Russian armed forces liberated settlement of Vysyola in the Zaporozhye region. And, well, let me go through some map, dear friends, to show you all the locations that I just mentioned. So when it comes to Zaporozhye direction, this is the Vysyola settlement that is liberated by Russian forces. I guess today or in next several days, let's say, Zelyony Gai and Vysoka settlements will be liberated also. And at that point, also Zatyshye most likely. And at that point, I think we would not be mistaken if we will argue that battle for Gulyai-Polye has begun. Some military experts actually already are saying that battle for Gulyai-Polye, major stronghold of Kyiv regime on the eastern flank of Zaporozhye region, has already started. When it comes to Pokrovsk-Mirnograd agglomeration, well, Russian troops continue to finalize clearing operation in Pokrovsk, which is under operational control of the Russian troops. When it comes to Mirnograd, no reports about significant progress of the Russian forces inside the city. I guess Russian troops still are taking time and attempting to persuade hostile troops to lay down arms and surrender. Maybe in next several days we will see mass surrender of Kyiv regime's forces in Mirnograd. This is only explanation I can have for this relatively long time that it's taking for Russian troops to go deep into the city. Most likely negotiations are underway, and soon we're going to see mass surrender of the Kyiv regime's forces there. Also, a number of sources are reporting that Russian forces liberated Ivanopolye settlement on the southeastern flank of Konstantinovka settlement. In addition to that, there is a major developments that is taking place on the northern sector of DPR, and to be more precise, in Seversk-Liman direction. When it comes to Liman, Russian troops are advancing towards Prishib, Drobyshevo settlements. Russian troops are advancing from Stavki settlements towards the Liman and to basically flanked Liman garrison of Kyiv regime from western side. Simultaneously, we have reports that Russian armed forces established control over Maslinovka settlement on outskirts of Liman, and the forward units of the Russian armed forces already are inside the city itself, and this most southern eastern part of it already marked as a gray zone. That means Russian presence of the Russian military is being detected there, and enter this forestry basically. that is in eastern side of Liman is under Russian control. And today, major breaking news from this area is that on top of what I already said, that Russian armed forces established control over the Yampol settlement. This is going to be a surprise for many. Obviously, earlier I was reporting about progress of the Russian armed forces in Yampol direction, but even I was surprised to see this rapid advance of Russian troops in this settlement. And today we have a report from a number of sources that Yampol is under full Russian control. This information not yet confirmed by Russian Defense Ministry, but probably it will be today or tomorrow. Also, Russian troops are advancing in Platonovka area to cut main supply and support line of Kiev regime's forces in Seversk that contacts basically Seversk with Liman. But this road is already basically road of the death because Kiev regime's garnison in Seversk is unable to basically use this road freely as they would like. When it comes to Seversk itself, Russian armed forces already conducting offensive operation inside the city of Seversk after recent breakthrough. And forward units of the Russian militaries are already in the central parts of the Seversk. Situation is developing rapidly, and it is well possible, I think, that before end of next week, Seversk will be completely liberated by Russian militaries. And now Kupyansk, of course. Kupyansk is a Kharkov region, and well, as you can see, dear friends, city is marked as under full Russian control already. Number of units of the Kiev regime are still encircled there on the left bank of the Oskol River in this area, and Russian troops continue to neutralize these forces. But city itself is under full Russian control. This is, of course, major success of Russian militaries on the Kharkov direction, and a major setback for NATO and NATO-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky. Although, as it is always the case, most likely Kiev regime would not acknowledge that they lost control over the Kupyansk. This was happening every time when Russian militaries were establishing control over the larger or relatively large towns. And I don't think this will change. Probably for another week or so, maybe 2 weeks, Kiev regime will refuse to acknowledge that they have lost their control over their Kupyansk. That's been said, dear friends, let's continue with some other news. And yesterday there was another exchange of bodies of the killed military personnel. Russian side received bodies of 30 heroes that failed on the battlefield. And in exchange, Russian side transferred to Kiev regime 1,000 bodies of their failed Ukrainian military personnel. This is not the first such exchange, of course. More than a dozen such exchanges has taken place as a result of agreements in terms of humanitarian activity that were reached during the Istanbul negotiations. Let's continue now with some other topics. And of course, everybody is talking about this Trump's 28-point so-called peace plan. I shared my take about it yesterday. I don't really have much to add to my yesterday's take, but anyways, we have published all these 28 points. Ukrainian MP published this deal, this proposal that is coming from Trump, his administration. And let me give you details on that. So Ukrainian opposition MP Alexei Goncharenko, Nazi criminal, by the way, and mass murderer that was involved in a massacre of civilians in Odessa when dozens of civilians were burned alive by this neo-Nazi scum of humanity. But he is an MP on Kiev-controlled territory. Unsurprisingly, all the scumbags are in so-called elites there, and are actively used by enemies of Russia from Western elites. And so this creature, Goncharenko, has published the text of the peace plan reportedly presented to Kiev by the US administration. this week. Let's go through points from this so-called peace plan. So first, Ukraine's sovereignty will be confirmed, whatever that means. Second, a full and comprehensive non-aggression agreement will be concluded between Russia, Ukraine, and Europe. All ambiguous of the past 30 years will be considered resolved. Very general formulation there. It is a third point. It is expected that Russia will not invade their neighboring countries and that NATO will not expand further. Okay. NATO is actually working right now to bring Moldova into this anti-Russian criminal terrorist organization, right? Number 4, a dialogue will be conducted between Russia and NATO, mediated by the United States. Is if United States not a member of the NATO? These sickening animals, man, from the Western elites, man. I just cannot, man. I just sick and tired of this shit. So dialogue will be conducted between Russia and NATO, mediated by United States, to resolve all security issues and create conditions for the escalation, thereby ensuring global security and increasing opportunities for cooperation and future economic developments. No thanks, we have to stay away from collective West as much as possible, of course. Ukraine will receive reliable security guarantees. Number 5. Number 6, the size of the armed forces of Ukraine will be limited to 600,000 personnel. It's no anymore right now. On the paper, maybe they have more troops, but in reality, I don't think so. So what kind of limitation is that? I'm telling you, man, this is all garbage, right? This so-called 28 peace plan of Trump, his administration, is a total nonsense, garbage. Yet another attempt to fool Russia, basically, right? They are coming up with a Minsk free. They are coming up with a Minsk free, right? And we have no right. I mean, Russian leadership has no right to fail to this scam once again. Number 7, Ukraine agrees to enshrine in its constitution that it will not join NATO, and NATO agrees to include in its status a provision that it will not accept Ukraine in the future. Number 8, NATO agrees not to deploy troops in Ukraine. Well, let them try, man. Let them try. What kind of article is that? NATO agrees not to deploy troops to Ukraine. I mean, let them try. Let's see what will happen. 9th pointer, European fighter aircraft will be stationed in Poland. They are stationed there anyways, and so what? Number 10, U.S. guarantees, the United States, U.S. guarantees for Kiev regime, I guess. United States will receive compensation for the guarantee. If Ukraine invades Russia, it will lose their guarantee. If Russia invades Ukraine, in addition to decisive coordinated military response, all global sanctions will be reinstated, recognition of the new territories and all other benefits of this deal will be revoked. If Ukraine without cause launches a missile at Moscow or St. Petersburg, why only Moscow or St. Petersburg? Does Russia don't have any more cities or towns or villages? Or what's so special about Moscow and St. Petersburg? What any special about these cities than Kursk, for example, legendary Russian city? So yet again, nonsensical. Whoever wrote this garbage, by the way, is just moron, right? That's all, really. 11th point, Ukraine retains the right to EU membership and will receive short-term preferential access to the European market while the issue is under consideration. One should keep in mind that EU is basically very rapidly transforming into a military alliance, and I think Moscow has to change its attitude towards the idea of Ukraine joining EU, because EU is a military alliance already. And EU unelected officials are talking about military stuff much often than about economical stuff. We all know this, right? 12-point powerful global package of measures for the, and when it comes to these so-called guarantees from US, by the way, it again, if Russia fails for this, if Russian leadership fails for this, man, I don't know. That will be, of course, devastating for Russia, because we all understand that globalists, if US will sign up for military guarantees for Kiev regime, globalists will trigger like that, at any moment. Military hostilities, right? They will provoke it at any given time. They are well capable of doing so. And then what? US is in war with Russia. US will launch its nukes against Russia and try to kill us all. And so what we're gonna do in that case? We will kill them all too. And that's it. We will all die, right? So yet again, whoever wrote these points is a total moron, by the way. Trump, Witkov, or whomever, Rubio, or whomever, by the way. They are freaking morons, or intellectually bankrupt creatures, right? That deserve no respect whatsoever. Scum of humanity, that's what they are, really. 12-pointer powerful global package of measures for the reconstruction of Ukraine, including, but not limited to, number A, creation of Ukraine's development fund to invest in high growth sectors, including technology, data processing centers, and artificial intelligence. B, the United States will cooperate with Ukraine on the joint reconstruction, development, modernization, and operation of Ukraine's gas infrastructure, including pipelines and storage facilities. C, joint efforts to restore war-affected territories, including the reconstruction and modernization of cities and residential areas. D, infrastructure development. E, extraction of minerals and natural resources. F, the World Bank will develop a special financing package to accelerate these efforts. Okay, number 13. From these 28 points, Russia will be reintegrated into a global economy. I mean, really? What this even means, by the way? What this even means? You see, these mentally ill creatures that are in the leadership of West, they think just because Russian cooperation, economic cooperation with the West is limited now, they think Russia is somehow isolated from the world economy. They think they are global economy, while in reality they are just a freaking fraction of this world. Irrelevant fraction even, right? Collective West is just irrelevant part of this world, man. That's it. If not nuclear weapons in hands of US, UK, and France, no one would care about them, man. Literally. And they still are acting if they are the world, right? And actual world is nothing. They're just non-existent. So what this even means? Russia will be integrated into global economy. What the hell, man? I can imagine that if US sent this nonsense to Russian leadership, probably Putin was reading this stuff and thinking, who wrote this, man? What kind of morons wrote this shit, man? Probably that was and still is like first reaction of Putin and all the others, if they actually get their hands on this so-called document. Then on this 13th point, on so-called reintegration of Russia into global economy, there is internal points. A, the lifting of the sanctions will be discussed and agreed upon gradually and on an individual basis. Bullshit, by the way. They're not going to lift no sanctions. Maybe they will lift like a couple of percentage of sanctions from that 30,000 plus sanctions that are imposed, but most of the sanctions will stay in place. 100%. We're not going to buy this nonsense. B, United States will conclude a long-term economic cooperation agreement aimed at the mutual development in the fields of energy, natural resources, infrastructure, artificial intelligence, data processing centers, rare earth mining projects in the Arctic, and there are other mutually beneficial cooperation opportunities. And you know what? No thanks. We don't need US for anything whatsoever, right? And I hope Russian leadership will not sold out Russia. to the US. We don't need US for nothing, literally nothing, right? We don't need them for anything whatsoever. And I hope Russian leadership will, while commenting on this matter, will say it openly that, you know what, you might want something from Russia, but we don't need you for nothing, right? Because that's how actually things are. We don't need US, man. And Russia-US trade relationships were never really great. Never. Russia and EU did had a bigger trade, 500 billion plus, right? But Russia and US, not really. In best years, trade between Russia and US were just maybe dozen or 2 dozen of billions, right, a year. Nothing, basically. We never needed US for anything, man. We never needed collective West for anything. And if not mentally ill oligarchs here in Russia that are seeking recognition of the Western elites, those scumbags, you know, if not that, Russia would not be dependent on European economies whatsoever, because world is much bigger than Euro. But yet again, unfortunately, historically speaking, whenever some bydla, we say, whenever bydla, which means scum, basically, whenever some scum manages here in Russia to get to position of elites, and unfortunately this happened quite often, those scum is seeking recognition of the Western elites because they want to feel like, you know, they are something, you know, special, while they are just a freaking scum, man. And that's why, remember Abramovich, scum of humanity? He stole money here in Russia, billions, tens of billions. And what he did, he invested in freaking yachts, right? He invested in Chelsea. He invested in the West, man, right? Huge sums of money. He took money from Russia, invested there. He was seeking recognition from this Western scum of humanity, Western so-called aristocracy, Western political class, Western elites, because that's what happened with the scum elements, man. When this bydla is getting into a position of power, or elites here in Russia, historically speaking, they are always seeking recognition of their Western so-called elites. And Abramovich is just one example. All of them are like that, man. Almost all of them. While ordinary people don't need no freaking recognition of the scum of humanity that Western elites are, man, I would not shake hand with the Western so-called aristocracies, man. They are beyond, you know, they are like filth, man. Why would I shake hand with the filth? But bydla thinks other ways, right? Anyways, Russia needs no freaking West, man, for nothing, absolutely nothing. Russia has every opportunities to be absolutely self-sufficient civilization, and that should be priority. And Russia has great friends, great allies, right? And we should keep relationships with the countries that actually can be reliable and are historically proven to be reliable. And West is definitely not that. See, Russia will be invited to return to G8. I mean, seriously, man? What for? What for Russia needs to be part of this irrelevant club? And what G7 is right now? You know, what G7 represents, man? Some falling economies or failing economies, irrelevant ones. Actually, what G7 is, man? Russia don't needs to be part of this irrelevant club, right? 100%. And they think they will manage to persuade Russia with these nonsensical promises. Well, we will invite you back into G8. I mean, really? No, thanks, man. Just stay away, you freaking morons. Stay away from us, man. Or we will actually deal with you, motherfuckers, right? That should be Russia's response to the Western elites, man. like that, straight like that, man. 14th point, frozen assets will be used in the following way. 100 billion of frozen Russian assets will be invested in US-led reconstruction and investment efforts in Ukraine. Even in this so-called peace deal, they cannot help themselves, man. These morons, they have to steal, man. They have to steal, right? Something always. These thieves, man. This dirty freaking filth that Western elites are. Even in this so-called peace proposal, they are articulating that they're gonna steal at least 100 billion of frozen Russian assets. Unbelievable. United States will receive 50% of the profits from this undertaking. Europe will add another $100 billion to increase the total investment available for Ukraine's reconstruction. Frozen European assets will be unfrozen. The remaining frozen Russian assets will be invested in a separate American-Russian investment vehicle that will implement joint American-Russian projects in areas to be determined. This fund will be aimed at the strengthening bilateral relations and increasing shared interests in order to create a strong motivation not to return to conflict. Garbage. 15th point, a joint American-Russian working group on security issues will be established to facilitate and ensure the fulfillment of all provisions of this agreement. Okay. Yet another nonsensical point there, by the way. 16th, Russia will legislatively enshrine a policy of non-aggression towards Europe and Ukraine. Okay. 17th, United States and Russia will agree to extend the validity of their treaties on their non-proliferation of nuclear weapons and arms control, including START 1. Okay, 18th, Ukraine agrees to remain non-nuclear state in accordance with the Treaty on non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. 19th, Zaporozhye nuclear power plant will be restarted under the IAEA supervision, really, and generated electricity will be split equally between Russia and Ukraine, 50-50. How so? Why? Who gives a fuck about Ukraine, man? Who are they to take 50% of energy of Russian nuclear power plant? What is this nonsense is about? But entire this freaking 28-point document, so-called document, is a nonsense, no surprises. 20th point, both countries undertake to introduce educational programs in a school and a society that promotes understanding and tolerance of different cultures and the elimination of racism and prejudice, really, both countries. There is a 5 to 7 million Ukrainians here. Did any one of them had any complaints that they've been treated poorly or anything like that? No, not really, man. I know personally several people from Ukraine. They are doing quite okay, right? No one cares. Are they from Ukraine or are they from Siberia? No one cares, man. You are from which part of Russia, man, right? No one cares. There is no anti-Ukrainian sentiment here in Russia. No one hates people from this so-called Ukraine. Literally no one, man. There is no such issue here. On the other side, in Ukraine, I mean, they hate everything Russian, right? These brainwashed elements, brainwashed as a result of active work of Western propaganda and Western assets. Well, they hate everything Russian. They are burning books, Russian books. They are destroying monuments for Russian poets and writers and thinkers, right? They literally hate everything Russian. They are taping people on the trees and torturing them publicly if they speak Russian. So, what both countries, what those psychos in Washington are talking about? Kiev control territory, yes. They have to be denazification programs there, 100%. But Russia has no issues with that. Here there is also internal points. Ukraine will adopt EU rules on religious tolerance and the protection of linguistic minorities. I mean, for God's sake, man, in Constitution of Ukraine, Russian language was protected and Russian Orthodox Church was protected, or Ukrainian Orthodox Church of Russian Patriarch was protected by Constitution. And did this help either Russian speakers or Church or Orthodox Church to be safe and secure? No, it did not, right? They don't care, man. They don't care what they have in their own constitution. So therefore, demilitarization, denazification, or this special military operation only can end when Russian troops will reach borders of the Western Ukraine, period. Nothing to discuss, really. Nothing to discuss, man. And this is all garbage, right? Special military operation will end when Russian troops will reach borders of the Western Ukraine. That's it. There is B point here. Both countries agree to lift all discriminatory measures and to guarantee the right of Ukrainians and Russian media and education. Yet again, you see, by the way, they are trying to discredit Russia. They are putting this nonsense in this document as if there is any discrimination of Ukrainians here in Russia, which is non-existent, man. There is no discrimination. No one cares, man. You came from Ukraine, or you came from Belarus, or you came from Siberia, man. No one gonna bother you, man, because no one cares, right? And C point here, all Nazi ideology and activity must be rejected and prohibited. Well, there is quite a number of Nazi formations on the Q-controlled territory. Let them give us a showcase. Let them showcase how they're gonna deal with the Nazis. 21st point, territories. Number A. Crimea, Lugansk, and Donetsk will be recognized de facto as Russian, including by the United States. De facto recognition means nothing and is nothing, right? We don't care about this stuff. These territories are Russian Federation, period, and whole world have to recognize this. This is not negotiable. That's it. The Kherson and Zaporozhye region will be frozen along the line of contact, which will mean de facto recognition along the line of contact. Yet again, nonsensical stuff. Both Kherson and Zaporozhye regions are Russian territories and should be recognized by whole world as such. Anything else is unacceptable, period. C. Russia renounces other territories, probably referring to parts of Kharkov, Sumy, and Dnipropetrovsk Oblast that it controlled outside the 5 regions. Not happening, by the way. Hundreds and potentially thousands of Russian troops died liberating parts of Kharkov region, parts of the Dnipropetrovsk region, and those territories, there have to be referendums there and let the people decide. But Kyiv regime will never ever regain control over these territories, I think, right? And if Moscow will say otherwise, well, people might get very much disappointed. And what that means is, many people are already disappointed big times about many things, right? And I don't think people need additional irritating stuff, right? Let's keep that in mind too. The point here, Ukrainian forces will withdraw from their part of Donetsk Oblast they currently control. This withdrawal zone will be regarded as a neutral demilitarized buffer zone, internationally recognized as a territory belonging to the Russian Federation. Russian forces will not enter this demilitarized zone. Now America is going to tell Russia where Russian troops will go on Russian territory and when Russian troops will don't. No thanks, man. No thanks. Russian militaries are finalizing liberation of DPR anyways, right? It's only a matter of time. There is only this Kramatorsk Slaviansk stronghold that is basically left in the DPR. Yes, there are some small pockets of resistance here and there, but major, when it comes to major stronghold, it's Kramatorsk Slaviansk line, and the Russian troops are very close there, very close. And we should keep in mind that Kiev regime's forces are on breaking point. They are on a breaking point, right? So this cannot be acceptable, by the way. Who the hell is a US president who to tell Russia where Russian troops can go and cannot? I mean, what we are talking about here. 22nd point, after future territorial arrangements are agreed, both the Russian Federation and Ukraine undertake not to change these arrangements by force. Any security guarantees will not apply in the event of violation of this commitment. 23rd, Russia will not obstruct Ukraine's commercial use of the Dnieper River, and agreements will be reached on the free transportation of grain across the Black Sea. 24th, humanitarian committee will be created to resolve outstanding issues. A, all remaining prisoners and bodies will be exchanged on the all-for-all principle. B, all civilian detainees and hostages will be returned, including children. C, family reunification program will be implemented. And when it comes to this B sentence, by the way, if any side has hostages, it's a Kiev regime. They still did not return civilians that they kidnapped from Kursk region, dozens of them. Russia, there is no Ukrainian hostages in Russian hands, never was. We should keep that in mind. Yet again, in this so-called peace plan, on many occasions actually, Washington is trying to discredit Russia, to paint Russia as some evil force, right? And Moscow has to be very vocal about it. Very vocal about it, right? And very aggressive about it. This is totally unacceptable, and I hope Moscow will finally change the tune in regards to Washington and will tell them, to Trump and all his animals around him, that their place is next to Parasha. That's what they are, man. Freaking animals and bitches. Dirty scum. They are in no position to tell anything to anyone, especially to Russia. 25th, Ukraine will hold their elections 100 days after agreement is signed. We don't give a damn about them. 26th, all parties involved in the conflict will receive full amnesty for actions committed during the war and will undertake not to file claims on pursue complaints in the future. Whatever. 27, this agreement will be legally binding. Its implementation will be monitored and guaranteed by the Peace Council headed by President Trump. Really? Holy shit, man. Predetermined sanctions will apply in the event of violation. To have any agreement with Trump, by the way, with that Epstein client, is just on its own is extremely embarrassing to Russia and everyone, all humans, by the way. Trump is a disgusting creature, absolutely disgusting creature, and no one can have anything to do with that creature and his inner circle, man. These are disgusting creatures, man, right? You cannot stand next to them, right? Nothing to be said about signing anything with them, man. With this тошнотворные животные. That's what they are, man. 28. Once all parties have agreed to and signed this memorandum, the ceasefire will enter into force immediately after both sides withdraw to their agreed positions so that implementation of their agreement can begin. So that's a 28-point so-called plan, by the way, total garbage, nonsense. I don't know why would anyone in Moscow, in Russian leadership, will take this garbage seriously, right? They might act diplomatically and say, yeah, we will read it, we will give our take on that and stuff. Okay, but no one can take this shit seriously, man. No one. This is yet another attempt on part of globalists, neocons, enemies of Russia, by the way, to gain some time, basically, right? They are losing this proxy war. They need break. They want to gain some time. They desperately want break. That's all it is, right? This cannot work, and I'm telling you, special military operation will end when Russian troops will reach borders of the Western Ukraine. And only then. That's it. My personal take on the matter, and I think everyone, many people, maybe not everyone, definitely not everyone, but many people here in Russia probably will agree with me that there is nothing to discuss with the so-called Western elites. They cannot be trusted ever, right? And therefore, we have to do what we have to do. We have to push our enemy to the breaking point, and that is NATO also, obviously. And special military operation can end only when we will reach borders of the Western Ukraine. That's it. This 28-point plan is only attempt, even though, as I predicted, by the way, European globalists are whining now about this plan. Kiev regime is whining about that. Well, there are some points that they disagree, and this and that. This is all part of a game, right? They are desperate. They know Kiev regime's forces are on a breaking point. They know they are losing this proxy war, basically, right? And to gain some time, to have a break, by the way, to have a break, to reorganize Kiev regime, to rearm Kiev regime, reinforce, right? They need desperately break some time, and they are coming up with this stuff in a hope that they will manage to fool Russia. You know, they fool Russia on several occasions, Minsk 1, Minsk 2, and many other so-called agreements was exactly that, attempt to fool Russia, and unfortunately they succeed with it. And probably they think they can do it again. Probably they think they can do it again, but no, not this time around, man. I don't think so. Let's see. Zelensky's regime confirmed that they have received this Trump's 28-point plan, and already some media outlets are reporting that Kyiv regime began putting some changes into this plan. Okay. And by the way, Axios went to report that U.S. is offering Kyiv security guarantees similar to NATO fifth article, right? Partially, this was mentioned in this 28-point so-called agreement, and this is obviously yet again this plan not going to be adopted. We all understand that, but fact that this point was included in this 28-point agreement, that US will issue Article 5 kind of guarantee to Ukraine, demonstrates how out of touch with reality American political class is, right? Because just imagine agreement was reached actually, and US is offering fifth article type guarantees to Kyiv, right? And several weeks after agreement was signed, globalists provoked the war. Globalists know on their own they are unable to defeat Russia. They need US to have a chance, right? They are stupid, but not that stupid not to understand that without US, they cannot even dream about having a chance, right? And so agreement is signed a couple of weeks after. Globalists are provoking military hostilities, right? And what US is doing at that point? Declaring war on Russia? I mean, you tell me what US is doing at that point, declaring war on Russia and provoking full-scale nuclear exchange. Why US is offering to sign up for this stuff if they are serious, man? these kind of elements in this agreement on their own demonstrating that this plan was not created to be actually adopted. This is just attempt of globalists and their allies, neocons, to buy some time, man, to buy some time, right? Because in this so-called agreement, towards the end, there was a point when which said that, well, once sides will agree to work on this stuff, well, ceasefire is declared on the line of contact. And come on, man, what ceasefire? So nothing is worked out yet, but you are asking for ceasefire? Really? And yet again, by the way, this point that contact line gonna be frozen on current line in Kherson and Zaporozhye region, this would not work. If Russian president cannot, Constitution would not allow him to agree on that, because it's a Russian territory. All Russian territories have to be liberated. No Russian president, no anyone else, literally no one in this country has a legal right to agree on secession of Russian territories. It's illegal. Even to suggest that is illegal. Not to agree, but even to suggest something like that is illegal. And I believe people have paid their significant fines, and some was even jailed for suggesting secession of some territories. So Putin is not above Constitution. No one is above Constitution, right? So he cannot agree on that in principle. It's just not happening. But nevertheless, they don't even want Putin's agreement. They want to gain some time. They want break. They want this ceasefire to rearm, reinforce their proxies, to bring thousands and thousands of mercenaries from all over the world on a Kiev-controlled territory. And then once they will think that, well, they are ready now to start next round, they will launch military hostilities again. We cannot allow this to happen, obviously, right? And we will not. I hope so. I hope so, because I don't know, man. There was a Minsk 1 and Minsk 2, right? So Moscow failed to these deception operations of the West on numerous occasions. And who knows, man? No one can say that there is a 100% impossibility that Moscow would not fail for this deception operation again. Chances are little, I think, that Putin will fail to Western allies once again, but he might, man. I don't know. Probably we cannot say that there is absolutely no chances on that. TASS news agency is also reporting that US expects Zelensky to sign this peace plan by November 27. Okay. Who cares, man? Who cares? And as I said, European globalists and their proxies in Kiev, they are whining. They are whining big time that they did not knew nothing. They were not involved, and this is not okay with them. While in reality, they know perfectly well from the beginning, and they know now what is going on. It's all about fooling Russia. It's all about gaining some time for their proxies, right? Giving them some break to rearm, reinforce, and so on, right? That's all it is, man. And they also know that if they were unable to achieve a break now, then most likely maybe even in next several months, Kiev regime's armed forces gonna actually collapse. They are on a brink right now already. And we have seen breakthroughs after breakthroughs after breakthroughs, right? In Zaporozhye direction, in DPR, in Kharkov region. So Kiev regime's force is actually collapsing already. Process has begun and will only accelerate from now on. And therefore, they are desperate, man. They are desperate. And that's why, from seemingly nowhere, Washington come up with this 28-point plan. All right? Just to have a break, man, because they know they are stupid, of course, but still they do have some few brain cells, and they do understand that Kiev regime's forces, their proxy regime is collapsing basically, and their forces are collapsing as we speak, and will collapse, and Russia will liberate not just DPR completely, but entire Kharkov region, Zaporozhye region, Kherson region, Nikolaev, Odessa regions, Dnipropetrovsk region, of course, Poltava region, Chernigov region, Sumy region, Kiev, by the way, all the surrounding areas. And I'm telling you, Russian troops will stop only on the border with the Western Ukraine. That's my prediction. Anyways, RIA Novosti is reporting that U.S. Secretary of Army that was in Kiev yesterday, maybe still in Kiev, Daniel Driscoll, with 2 4-star generals, might visit Moscow now, might visit Russia to have a meeting with the Russian leadership after meeting with the Kiev regime's representatives, right? And on this matter, we have a comment from Peskov, press spokesman of the Russian president, that no meeting with U.S. Army Secretary Driscoll or is on Putin's agenda, right? So Putin has no plans to meet with this U.S. official and some U.S. generals, 4-star, 2-star, 3-star, who cares, man? A U.S. 4-star general is no any more educated than any Marine, by the way, that you take out there, right? That's it. Maybe Marines know more about military stuff than those 4-star generals, actually. Would not be surprised at all. But what U.S. 4-star generals know perfectly well is how to dress in a woman's dress. Right? They know that. So, yeah. But anyways, Putin has no plans to meet with this U.S. representatives that are suffering from gender dysphoria, right? RIA Novosti is also reporting that Moscow was not informed of Kiev's agreement to resume negotiations with Russia. I remind you that about a week ago, Foreign Ministry of Ukraine stated that they are cutting all negotiations with the Russian Federation. Then Zelensky, while being in Turkey and meeting with Erdogan, local president, stated that, they are ready for negotiations. But yet again, Peskov is saying, press spokesman of the Russian president, that Moscow did not receive no notification about the intent of Kiev to resume talks, right? And that's about it on this topic of this nonsensical topic, by the way, of U.S. 28-point so-called peace plan, reactions from the Europe and Kiev and this and that. It's all BS, obviously. A desperate attempt of enemies of Russia, Western elites, to buy some time, to fool Russia, to buy some time, and use this time to rearm, reinforce, reorganize their proxy Kiev regime, and then start next round, right? And we're not gonna fail for this, man. We're not gonna fail. Russian leadership, Russian leadership is quite diplomatic always, and therefore they will use diplomatic language that we will study this document. Let's see what we can do about it. Probably that's gonna be reaction from Moscow once they will receive this document officially. So they will use these general sentences that we will study this and let's see what we can do about it and this and that. But in reality, this is non-starter, man. This is non-starter. Everyone understands what West is trying to do. They fool us a couple of times, though. They did fool us a couple of times, and they are hopeful that they can do it again, but they cannot, man. I don't think there is anybody left in the Kremlin actually that still believes that Western elites can be trusted. If there is anybody like that in the Kremlin, it should be removed immediately, man. because that's a vulnerability on part of Russia. If anyone in Russian leadership and in a circle of Russian president and other high-ranking officials are still thinking that there is a realistic possibility to achieve agreements with the Western elites, and Western elites will honor these agreements, then such personalities have to be removed because they are just not professionals, clearly, and security services have to do some thorough checking of their backgrounds, because intellectual human being with more than 2 brain cells cannot trust Western elites. Just cannot. Impossible, right? So that is that also. To continue, by the way, and on the topic of what I just said, actually, on the topic of preparations on the part of Western elites to continue escalation with Russia, right? Gain break for now, get prepared their proxies better, and if necessary, even deploy their own troops. Well, look what Defense Minister of France is saying, or Defense Chief of France, Mandon. And this is a quote, by the way: France must be ready to lose the children to deter Russia. This is not a joke. And Defense Chief of France, Mandon, said that France must be ready to lose children to deter Russia. Oh, now you tell me, when Russia attacked France, man? I mean, yesterday? Maybe something happened yesterday or past night. Did we attack France? Because last time I checked, we didn't attack nobody, right? And last time Russia was actually engaged in a war with France was when France attacked Russia. And that did not end well for France, right? So you tell me now, how are you going to explain these kind of statements of military leadership of France? That people should be ready, basically, to get sacrificed, to get killed in a war with Russia. Is this not enough indicator that they are planning further escalations, further hostilities? Why otherwise anything like that would be said by Defense Chief of Fifth so-called Republic? And this is not all, by the way. Take a look at this. London announced again readiness to send troops to Ukraine. This so-called coalition of willing, first of all, UK and France, they cannot help themselves. Leadership of these countries, by the way, they cannot help themselves. They want to sacrifice their fellow citizens in a war against Russia. And they truly want to deploy their troops openly, right? Not some special forces, not tiny, not small units, but actually, large formations. They are dreaming about. And they will. For now, London is saying that they will deploy troops only after, and they even allocating money for this, by the way, $134 million, for example, already been allocated on top of whatever else they have designated for these purposes, to deploy troops, British troops, into Kiev-controlled territory after ceasefire is reached. So you see, in that so-called document, Trump's 28-point plan, it says no NATO troops on the Kiev-controlled territory, right? But we have this report from UK that they're going to deploy troops. So how are they going to disguise their troops? UK going to leave NATO? Are UK leaving NATO? No. They're not going to leave no NATO, right? And that means, by the way, that 28-point plan is total garbage. And they know this. Everyone knows this, right? London knows this, Berlin, Paris. They will just play games, by the way. London and all the other capitals in Europe will whine, and they will tell their proxy medias to whine about how their US come up with this plan without consulting with the European elites and stuff. But in reality, behind the closed doors, they are cooperating very well, right? This is their plan. This is plan of American neocons and the European globalists, right? That's how it is, man. And no matter how much they're gonna whine in Europe that they not being informed, no one gonna believe them, man. Some people probably was not informed. I mean, I don't think when globalists and neocons are working on some plans, they are informing all their puppets. Why would they, right? They are informing several people here and there that are necessary, right? For plan to work out in their minds, right, in a way that they want. But they're not going to inform everybody. They're not going to inform president of Romania, for God's sake, or president of Lithuania, right? What the hell, man? Or Spain, for that matter. They will tell information to actually more or less powerful puppets. One is in Washington, another is in London. Brussels might be informed on some level. Paris maybe, right? That's about it. They might not even inform their Berlin, anybody in Berlin, because Berlin is a total proxy, right? It's occupied country. Why would globalists waste time talking to their German puppets, man? Either chancellor or anyone else. Why would they? Anyways, meanwhile, I give you quite interesting news that seven Stinger manpads were detained on the border between Moldova and Romania. And you guessed, Moldova don't has Stingers in its inventory. Moldavian army don't has Stingers, by the way, in its inventory. And you tell me from where these Stingers were originated. It's a US weapon system, okay, we all know that, but how these Stingers end up in Moldova and from which country? And this is serious weapon, by the way. With a Stinger, one might take down plane, man, right? Passenger plane. One might get close to airport and shut down plane. It only takes one Stinger. Most likely that would be enough. It has a heat-seeking missile, and to miss on these jumbo planes, it's almost impossible, right? So God knows how many people's lives were saved by Romanian border guards, by the way, that conducted thorough checking of the vehicle in which they find seven Stinger manpads that were coming from Ukraine, of course, from Kiev-controlled territory. And who knows what final destination of these Stingers were? Maybe we will find out. But this information is just yet another reminder how dangerous this geopolitical game is that West is playing, Western elites are playing. They send so much weapons and so deadly weapons to their proxies in Ukraine, and so much weapons now from Ukraine end up in the hands of all sorts of criminals and the terrorists that, including in the Western world, that consequences is going to be dire and for decades to come. Consequences of these irresponsible policies of the Western elites. I mean, just imagine, man, some terrorists get their hands on seven Stingers, went to, I don't know, Munich airport, for example, and shut down seven freaking passenger planes. Can you imagine the level of tragedy? And this is due to these dangers, these risks are generated by Western elites themselves, right? Russia was issuing warnings, isn't it? Russian leadership was issuing warnings after warnings to the Western elites that they are making their mistake. They are sending weapons to Kiev regime that eventually significant part of which can end up in hands of all sorts of radical groups, terrorist groups, including in the Western world. And it's not gonna get any worse than this, man. Stingers are very serious stuff. Each of these manpods, by the way, these weapons are so serious, and risks for civilian aviation is so big that each of these this type of missiles are strictly controlled. It's supposed to be strictly controlled anyways, right? And I guess this is the case in US, in Russia, uh, probably in Europe also, for now at least, right? But this is not the case in Kiev controlled territory. Otherwise, how these seven Stingers end up on the border between Moldova and Romania? And Moldovan border guards did not even stop the vehicle, did not find these Stingers, man. Romanian border guards did. Anyways, a few more news, dear friends, and that's about it for this first update. And so, according to reports in the media, roughly 20% of entire deployed U.S. Navy is sitting in the Caribbean right now under a mission. The White House still insists as just counter-drug operation. 20% of the fleet, battle-capable fleet of U.S. battle-capable Navy, is in Caribbean right now. USS Gerald Ford is there, of course. Gerald Ford aircraft carrier strike group, B-1 and B-52 bombers are being also regularly deployed in that direction. Tomahawk-capable destroyers are positioned there off coast of Venezuela. Also, obviously, submarines, by the way, nuclear submarines that carry dozens and dozens of those Tomahawks, attack submarines. Special operations aviation is also constantly rehearsing attacks on Venezuela. Entire Marine Expeditionary Corps is forward deployed, right? Well, I'm not going to change my opinion, by the way. I think this increase, this build-up of U.S. militaries, by the way, of course, of Venezuela, in Puerto Rico and so on, is not just related with Venezuela, but I think Washington plans military hostilities against Cuba also. That's my take. You might agree with me, you might disagree, but I think this is not just this build-up is not just in regards to related to Venezuela, but to Cuba also. And when it comes to potential ground operation of US or potential military attack of US either on Cuba or on Venezuela, I think many countries in this world will have or might have a unique opportunity to revenge against US, right? And many will, not all, but many countries will, maybe not on a state level, but there are different groups of influencer or different influential groups. There are different private military companies all over this world, right? Including ones that are related to Russia, Wagner, PMC, for example, and there are some others too. And I think once US attacks Venezuela or Cuba, or once US attacks any country, by the way, in this world, it's going to be a green light for all these private military companies and all these countries that suffered from the hands of US to retaliate, to revenge, while maintaining plausible deniability. And Americans should keep that in mind, man. Americans should keep that in mind, right? And US militaries that will receive illegal order from the Trump to attack Venezuela, sovereign state, or Cuba, sovereign state, should keep in mind that they might face not just local military forces, but also highly qualified, highly professional special forces or former members of the special forces, let's say, of very many countries from this world. And will be better if U.S. militaries just refuse to obey illegal orders of the White House. That will be better, actually. They would save their lives, man. They would save lives of many thousands of civilians that they're gonna kill otherwise. And of course, they will kill because that's what American troops do. Usually, they go in and kill 10 times more civilians than they killed combatants, 20 times more civilians, 30 times more civilians, right? That's what they do, man. And that's why PTSD is that bigger issue in American militaries, right? Than in other countries, for example, because they kill civilians intentionally. And then after war, as American soldiers, they cannot live with all the horrors that they committed. They kill themselves, right? If they only fight combatants, if they did not kill civilians in numerous numbers, right? Then PTSD would not be that severe as it is case in US. This is explanation why thousands of American soldiers or veterans are killing themselves. They just cannot live with what they did. And yet again, American soldiers are killing 10, 20, 30, 100 times more civilians, or as a result of their actions are dying 100 times more civilians than combatants. Check, brother. Check how many combatants they killed in Iraq and how many civilians died. What about Libya? What about Afghanistan? Just check numbers, man. It's all available on internet. You might be shocked to find out that they actually killed, and as a result of their actions, actually died hundreds of times more civilians than combatants. And well, I'm gonna end news update on this report from RIA Novosti that Iran's president talked about moving the capital from Tehran to some other place, which is well, if they will do it, that's going to be, of course, historical move in history of this great civilization that Iran represents. Obviously, one of the oldest civilizations in this world. So Iran needs to move its capital from Tehran. IRNA reports President Masoud Pezeshkian as saying, the reality today is that we no longer have a choice. Moving the capital is a necessity, he said at the public meeting in Qazvin province. The reason for this, according to their head of state, is significant problems with their water supply, which coupled with the growing urban population could create a humanitarian catastrophe. In March, Iranian authorities faced a serious crisis in 4 provinces at once: Khorassan, Razavi, Yazd, Isfahan, and Tehran. The cause was years of drought. The main problem facing the Iranian government in these regions is the drying up of rivers, marshes, and reservoirs, and the declining efficiency of dams. And yes, they have to invest more, by the way. I mean, they can do nothing about weather, obviously, but they can invest more in infrastructure, and they should invest more in infrastructure to be ready for drought seasons as much as possible, obviously. But yet again, yes, moving capital into other city definitely can help in this regard, because capitals, people are drawn towards capitals like it's magnet of sort, isn't it? Because usually capitals are mega cities, megapolises. They offer more opportunities, more jobs, more this and that, and if capital move there in some other place, that will create a boom. That will help that other city and the region around to undergo rapid development. So it's a good move. In certain circumstances, this might be actually a good move, and you might be surprised, but maybe not quite often, but time to time, there are some talks here also in Russia to move capital into some other place. Some are suggesting to move capital into Far East, exactly for reasons that I just mentioned, because presence of capital, of course, brings tremendous investments, brings more people, more opportunities, right? And development of far east of Russia is long-term priority, obviously, of government and the country. But it's not easy, by the way, to attract people to move towards the Far East. First of all, because of the climate, of course, it's a harsh climate there, not as mild as it is in European part of Russia, right? But yes, such talks are taking place here in Moscow also, and from former Soviet republics, there is Kazakhstan, for example, as an example, that moved capital from original city Almaty to new one, Astana, right? And it's successful. One might argue it's a successful move on part of Kazakhstan. So it does works time to time, isn't it? Anyways, this is it for today's news segment. Hopefully, you did find it informative and useful. And well, I believe there was a donation on PayPal, dear friends, from Douglas. Thank you very much, Douglas, for donation through PayPal. Donation was $70. Thank you very much. I appreciate your generous supporter. And comment is a gifter, a selfless act of kindness. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Douglas. And there was also Scooby gifted 5 premium subscriptions to all members of our community. Thank you very much, Scooby. These 5 gifts of premium subscriptions is $25, right? One premium subscription month in a month is a $5. So thank you very much, Scooby, for $25 donation basically to this project. I appreciate your support. Thank you, Scooby, and thank you, Douglas. And dear friends, there was no super chat, isn't it? There was no super chat, and therefore I will end the live stream now. And dear friends, there are five free gifted subs now unclaimed on Rumble. So if you are a member of our community, you can go in and you might get this premium subscription from Scooby as a gifter. And so yes, this is it for now, dear friends. Hopefully you did like the video. Hopefully it was informative enough, interesting enough, entertaining enough. And in that case, please click that like button and leave some commentary. It might help to deal with the algorithm. And so yes, that's it for now. Let's see how day goes news-wise, dear friends. Or maybe later on I will publish a second news update on my Patreon page and Boosty page, or maybe I will launch second live stream. Let's see. Thank you all for your attention. Have a wonderful day. Have a great upcoming weekend, and take care. Bye for now.